Welcome to the Best is Surrey podcast. My name is Paul Deach.
I'm Marisa Heath.
So, Marissa, our Hollywood podcast went down quite well last week. Had a lot of good feedback about that.
Yeah.
A lot of people didn't even realise that half of that stuff goes on in Surrey.
No, I had loads of people saying they didn't realise that. So yeah, bit of information for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get straight into it this week, and again, we'll stick to our format. We'll talk about the national brief. What's on your radar nationally?
Well, I mean, obviously the big news is the fact we're on the brink of World War III, one could think, with what's going on in Israel and Iran. And yeah, it's all really big stuff. I don't think we should get pulled into that on this podcast, though. That is an international issue, really.
It is, but it affects a lot of people. I have family in Israel and a lot of friends, and my WhatsApp's been going mad today.
I bet.
Yeah, it is a very tense time.
I think it's sort of linked to our thinking about investing in defence and how we support this situation basically as well. So it does have a link to national issues. You're absolutely right. But actually, what I will do, and this isn't being kind of spiteful or just picking on Labour again, they are the government. That's what happens when you're in government. But the gifts thing is still rumbling on.
Rumble, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, and it's very relevant to the main theme of the podcast today, which we'll come on to shortly. But basically, I was just reading that Labour have received gifts worth £1 million from betting firms now. Political parties receive gifts, they receive donations. That's a fact of life, but
Yeah.
it weights a bit when it's a betting firm to me because they are questionable in their morality. Now, a lot of people would say wrong, they're just a business running their business and things like that. But I think when they start giving money to political parties, I don't think that's great at all. I don't know what you think.
No, it's not. It's not great, and it's amazing how this thing has just rumbled on and on and on. And I think what really sticks in people's throats with this is, the hypocrisy of it all. And today on the news, Keir Starmer's basically said, "Oh well, I'm going to give 6 grand back." Big deal. I mean, his glasses cost 3 grand. His glasses alone cost 3 grand. Apparently, he's paying back some of the Taylor Swift tickets and all that. It's unbelievable, actually.
That's actually more of a mistake than not doing anything in a way, because it just, again, it's not going to really make a dent. But there is a difference to me between however much he had, 100 grand or whatever it was from his colleague, his friend, and then getting it from companies that have skin in the game in terms of legislation and things. And I don't know, Paul, if you've ever known anyone with a gambling addiction, they are really
Oh,
serious
actually.
people's lives. So I think fine, run your betting businesses, but you shouldn't be influencing government and you certainly shouldn't be paying. I think there should be blocks completely on accepting money from organisations like that personally. But I don't want to get too into that because in a moment we will reveal the main theme and it will be a bit related to all of that. What was your national issue?
Well, actually, I want to talk about the Conservative Party conference. Now, I've never been to a conference before, and I've got no intention of ever going to one, quite frankly. I can't think of anything worse, but I have been following some of the main sort of stuff on TV. I know you've been to the conference in the past, and you were there, was it yesterday? Yeah, right. Well, what's sort of interesting to me in this conference compared to the ones that I've observed, in recent history, is that it is completely dominated by the leadership battle, if you will. And the focus is entirely on that. And I have to say, I think it's a bit of a mad process, to be honest with you. Um, you know, that you've got the parliamentary party who are going to whittle it down to the last two. Okay. And then the party members will select the leader. Now, I just think it's a bit odd that the parliamentary party are going to be the ones that whittle it down to the final two. Partly because I think that, well, actually, the two that I would like to see in the final probably won't get in the final because the parliamentary party probably won't select them. And we've got a lot of inexperienced MPs there at the moment in the parliamentary party. Literally just been elected. In some respects, some might think that's a good thing. I don't know, but then you've got the ones that have been there for ages, and it could be argued that they're the ones that have got us into this mess in the first place. So with all the infighting and everything. So I don't know. It just all seems a little bit odd to me. The whole process. I think that it should be the members that decide who are in the final two, not the parliamentary party. And yeah, I'll just like the members to have all the say, really, not the parliamentary party. I mean, what's your view?
Well, I think it's a flawed process in all the political parties, how they choose their leader, to be honest. I don't think there's an easy way of doing it. I think you have to try and make it as democratic as possible. And I suppose the closest you can get to that is all of the members. We didn't get it right last time, did we, with Liz Truss? That's for sure, when the parliamentary party played games and manoeuvred and things. So, yes, I don't have much faith in that. But just to say, actually, what really interested me about being at the conference yesterday was one, the amount of young people there, that was really confusing. I felt old. I was going there thinking, haha, I get to feel young today. And I didn't. It was full of lots of young people. And secondly, there were loads of fringe events where people were talking about new ideas. And I think some of the media have been quite bitchy about this and said the Conservatives seem to be having quite a vibrant conference. They should just be sort of crying in the corners. But actually, there was almost a feeling of like, for now, the pressure's off of being in government. We can start to innovate and think about new things and discuss ideas. And that seemed to be going down really well. There was a lot of vibrancy and just these sort of new policy things coming through, which I thought excellent. That's what the country actually needs. We need obviously strong opposition, so the leader's incredibly important, but we also need people to start thinking about different ways of doing things. This government, not just the Labour government, this situation of government hasn't been working for a while in my mind.
Right.
UK needs a refresh.
Yeah, fair enough. And dare I ask, who would you like to see in the final two?
Genuinely, I've been asked this a lot, and I genuinely don't know at this stage. I know that sounds like I'm just trying to sort of get out of things, but it's really difficult because I'm quite different in my views on things. So around the environment, conservation, wildlife, compassion, looking after people and things, I'm very, very central in that. And I believe cross-party working is quite important. But then on other things, I do think I've had enough of immigration. I do think the government needs to shrink back and get the heck out of people's lives. I do think immigration's gone too far. So on that side, I'm sort of, so I vary. I move across the spectrum of conservatism quite a lot. So that makes it really difficult for me. I haven't yet seen a candidate that does that for me. However, I think that some have shown hints that they might. I think it will probably come down to probably Kemi and Jenrick in the end, but I could be wrong because, as you say, it depends what the MPs are thinking.
Yeah, yeah. Well, for what it's worth, I think looking at all the candidates right now, I think I would probably like to see Tom Tugendhat
Okay.
as the leader.
Yeah.
But I'd like to see Tom and Kemi in the final two to battle it out. I mean, I like Kemi. I've got a lot of respect for her. I like how tough she is and that she takes no crap off anybody. And I love that she's a fighter. And some people don't like that, but I
No,
do
we
respect that in her. Do respect that in her. Um, but when it comes right down to it, I think Tom Tugendhat would be the one that, first of all, I think he acts like a real statesman. I like the way that he speaks. He's very sensible. He's an ex-military man, and I think in this terrible world that we're in right now, it needs a strategic thinker, and I think that he's probably the man
mm,
for the job.
yeah. Well, we'll see over the next week who they whittle down to the final two, and we can discuss it again next week. Um,
Okay.
the local issues. Do you want to start on local issues?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Happy to. So I picked up today actually that the campaign for rural England. So BBC were reporting that the campaign for rural England have said that the new government housing targets are completely unsustainable and will lead to an unsustainable increase in Surrey's population and inflict serious damage on the environment. And I'm inclined to agree. And interestingly, I followed you around because I was helping you with your parliamentary campaign in Dorking and Hawley, and you were saying that all along.
Well, I just think we've got to be honest about this. I mean, I've just left home about an hour ago to pop out, and my whole road was just congested of cars parked out the front of it. Everywhere I went, the roads were busy. Every time I get on trains, they're busy. Everywhere I go is busy. There's people all over the place. We have to get to a point where we're like, our population cannot go up anymore. It's not sustainable. And I think with housing, I forget the statistic, but a large part of Surrey still is green belt and green space. Okay, but that is what makes Surrey what it is. That's the point. So why should we destroy that and just carry on building over it? Now, I get the view perspective, and I genuinely believe in this. We need places for our young, for our children to be able to go and buy their own home. We need places for key workers to be able to live. So I accept that. But that to me would be about working out the numbers and us deciding how we do that as a Surrey county, not an individual but district and boroughs, and not as the national government doing it, us, to see what we need for the Surrey economy. So throwing these figures at us, I've always said is totally unsustainable. And I've warned people that it will destroy the nature of Surrey, those lovely rural villages, the things that we're used to. They have already changed dramatically in my 20 years here. So I think over the next 5 years, we're going to see another huge change.
No, I completely agree with you. And you know, the thing is that now I haven't got the report in front of me right now, but I seem to remember it
Mhm.
talking about an extra 10,000 new homes every year in Surrey,
Mad. Yeah.
right? So over the parliamentary term, that's 40,000 new homes, right? Now, as a county councillor, and not really my area of responsibility, but you know, I regularly get emails from constituents saying they can't get an appointment at the GP. School places is an issue. The roads are congested, and you know, and I know that potholes is you know something that people talk about a lot, but that's because of the sheer volume of traffic on our roads going over all the utility works that.
London, yeah, we've got more traffic than any other area, so the pressure's immense. And already, issues like mine. So I'm handling environment and net zero, but these aren't mandatory statutory things the council does. The things they have to do, adult social care, children's services, special educational needs and things. So the more people that come in, the more need for that money. And then budgets like mine get hit because everyone says no, adult social care is more important, rightly.
Yeah.
SEND is more important. These are people's lives. So the things we want to do in Surrey to protect our environment, to look after it, the money shrinks from all of those areas to go to support the population. Let's just put it into context: 1.2 million residents in Surrey, 40,000 new homes with probably 2 or 3 people minimum living in them. That's a big chunk of extra people coming in.
Yeah, and you know, what one fact from the Office of National Statistics is that you know there are more cars per household in Surrey than in any other part of the country.
Mm.
I think it was something ridiculous like I don't know where they get the point from, but 2.2 or 2.3 cars per household. So you've only got, you know, you don't have to be Carol Vorderman to work out how many extra cars that's going to be on the road. You
Yeah.
know, and the strain on, we've already got, you know, SEND is or a big topic at the moment, you know, adult social care, you know, we're creaking as it is. And I don't hear anything about, all I'm hearing is more houses, but
Yeah.
I'm not hearing about the soft infrastructure that will support that.
Schools, whatever it is. Yeah, no, it is really worrying. And I think that um people have a right to be worried when massive new developments are coming near where they live. It's easy to just sort of say it's all NIMBYism. It isn't all NIMBYism. It's people protecting what they've bought and what they've looked after in their community too. So it's going to be incredibly difficult. Let's see what happens. I mean, when you go to London or certain areas, you see all these buildings that were done in what was it, the 60s or the 70s when Labour were in, and they're the most ugly buildings. You always kind of go, that was 70s Labour. So they wanted to throw up housing for people as fast as possible, build them cheap, build them, quick, and they just look awful. And I really don't want to see the architecture in areas changed by cheap housing being thrown up. That's another issue as well. It's not just how much housing, it's what it looks like.
Oh, quite right. The character will, you know, the way it looks to me is going to the character of Surrey is going to change forever, and that'll be a crying shame, especially when we look at some of the villages you and I walked around.
Phenomenal.
Uh, you know, in Dorking and Hawley, some of the most amazing villages, and that you know we got to protect that. And I actually fully support the campaign for rural England on Yes.
get more involved with them. I think we all need to do, we all know we've got to have some more housing, there's no doubt, but I think we've all got to be ready to fight to make sure it's the right housing in the right place and it doesn't ruin other.
Absolutely. And that leads us to our main theme today, and that is, does the current political system work for Surrey? Now, and this really matters because local politicians can impact everybody's day-to-day life, sometimes much more than national politicians are MPs. So, for instance, do you want a 20-mile-per-hour zone in your area? ULEZ, closing off roads, agreeing to huge developments, as we've already just discussed, and spending millions on vanity projects, sending a council bust, and increasing car parking charges. So I know this is something you feel quite strongly about, especially when we look at how the government now is under pressure because of the sleaze. They said they were going to clean it up, and actually, it seems they're just as bad as the previous ones. So yeah, let's hear some of your views on that, Marisa.
So what I think we're questioning is our sort of makeup of the politics across this county and what it delivers for people. Now, I think you have to go first nationally and look back. Sleaze isn't a new thing, okay? It's been
No,
around a long time. And the reason I say that is because bit by bit it's chipped away at voters, at residents, and how they
yeah,
feel politicians broadly, and that has had an impact locally. So you started off with all the, I think it was sex scandals and things in the 90s under John Major. Then you had Tony Blair, and I don't think there's anything that could be worse than an illegal war based on lies. That to me, that eroded my trust. That's what got me into politics. Then you had the champagne socialism of do what we say, not as we do, stuff that came through. Then you had the expenses scandal, I think 2008, 2009, where MPs were
that was
buying
huge, wasn't it? Yeah,
pornography and things like that on their
yeah,
expenses. That was really awful. Then
yeah.
you have Boris of Wallpaper Gate and some holidays and his COVID party. Now you've got Starmer. No, Starmer also had some sort of thing in COVID, beers or whatever he was photographed doing. But then he's now got the free clothes and the holidays and things too. And around the edges, there's constant stories. And this, there's been Conservatives, but there's also been Labour and Liberal Democrats. I think someone got pulled out of the Liberal Democrat conference for sort of groping or sex pesting or something the other week. So it's just constant. There is always news about a politician up to no good or something going on. And I think that's led to the public often just really disliking politicians and certainly not respecting them, and a loss of trust. And I think that's had a much bigger impact than we first think on what we do on a local level as well, and on how
Couldn't
people.
agree more. Couldn't agree more with that, Marissa. Yeah, absolutely right. And as local politicians, and let's face it, we don't really get paid for it. We get an allowance. We can talk about that in a sec. We get an allowance for being local councillors, but you know, really, when I think about it, it costs me money to be a councillor. I know what my day rate is at work, and when I compare what I get, let's say, on a day at the council, the two don't really compare. But I often get tarred with the same brush as we're both conservatives. We often get tarred with the same kind of a sleazy brush that the national guys and girls get tarred with, and it's quite unfair, really. But what doesn't help, and I think one of the things that we were going to talk about was the caliber of candidates going down, especially at local level. And I've noticed that, actually. And I think one of the reasons why that is because it's not just the sleaze, it's also the toxicity around politics, whether it be local or national. There's some really nasty, vile stuff that goes on, not just by members of the public posting it on, I don't know, Facebook groups or whatever, but actually other politicians, other local politicians or their supporters and activists just being utterly vile on social media. And I have to say, to my shame, I've got dragged into that myself, because what you find happens is, someone has a go at you online, or puts something through a letterbox that is completely untrue, trying to assassinate your character to score a few grubby points and a few extra votes. And what you find yourself doing is saying to yourself, what you should really do is ignore it, but what you do is you try to defend yourself, and you sort of get dragged into it yourself. And I've been guilty of that myself, I've got to admit, to my shame. Um, I've learned to deal with it a lot better now. In the last couple of years, I'm much better equipped to deal with that stuff. But I honestly believe there is a concerted campaign by some, we don't have to mention who they are now, but a concerted campaign to be literally as nasty and as vile as possible to put people off standing against them.
Yeah, but also to win their position on things. So attacking an issue that affects residents and going after it again and again can be, on one hand, that you're fighting for those residents, but it can also be that you're just fighting for political point scoring
Right.
and trust across the board. I don't often attack other politicians of any party, actually, because I think when we do that, we harm ourselves as well. So I think we have to be really careful about it. But if we go back 20 years, when I was a naive undergraduate student at Royal Holloway, I got onto the council at that time, running my
How
borough.
old were you?
I was at very early 20s, like 20, 21. Yeah.
There must have been one of the youngest councillors in the country at the time.
And I remember it was just full, the council, of older men and women, more men but women as well, who had all had quite high flying careers. So they were like, ex sort of managing director at, I don't know, Exxon Mobil or Tesco's, or
Yeah,
they'd all had big jobs, and they'd become councillors because they'd lived in the area for ages, and they still wanted their brain to be going, and they cared about the area.
yeah,
And we did everything properly. I mean, we dressed up for meetings, we were polite, nobody rowed, you put your hand up and spoke nicely. If you disagreed, you set it out. Everything was done under this kind of perfect conduct. By the time I left, it was the complete opposite of that. People were attacking each other, people in the same parties were attacking each other, people were misleading, not getting the full information, not reading their papers properly. All sorts of things were happening. Now, the political makeup had changed in that time, so maybe that's a reason for it. And I'm not sort of saying that because Liberal Democrats came in, or Labour or something, it all went to hell. That's not the point. I'm just saying something changed during that time in terms of people holding the role with a certain dignity and respect that they'd had before. And I thought to myself, I also noticed that less people were coming forward. So when a seat became vacant, you might have had two or three people in the past, and they had interviews with the local association, and then the association would vote, and the candidate would go through as the winner and stand for the seat. That wasn't happening anymore. You'd be going, oh God, we've only got one person. Oh God, we haven't got anyone. Let's find someone. Hey, you over there, will you stand for the seat? And it started to get different. And I think that's because the toxicity coming from the national level was putting people off, and they just sort of looked in and thought, this
yeah.
doesn't look.
Why would I put myself through it? Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think there's also from the public, and this is something I try very hard to try and put right, with the comms that I put out on my Facebook page and the way that I engage with local residents. But I think there's a real lack of understanding from the public as to what a councillor is and what their responsibilities are and what they can actually achieve.
Yeah, but people aren't told any of this stuff. So unless they're in it, when you go into politics, people who go into politics are strange. Let's be straight about it. We're strange people, and we think that everyone else is as keen and interested in all this stuff as we
But
are.
not.
Not, because they're living their lives and they've got their own interests and things. So we think by some sort of form of osmosis, they know exactly what we know and what we're doing. And generally they don't. We knocked on doors during the general election where people thought they were voting for their councillor. And the whole dynamic changed. People were voting at this national election for what they saw as a local champion, which was almost like a councillor. And I think that's often where things have gone wrong nationally, that we started to vote that way. So we've put in people that might not have the calibre to think on a national level. They're
Right.
too local, and things, but people just weren't really sort of clear on what was going on. And there's all these elections every year, borough elections, parish sort of stuff going on, county stuff, national elections. We used to have the European elections as well, and it's just really unclear. So I think there's a massive gap there of telling people what they do. And if you said to people, oh no, we at the county deal with budgets in the tens of millions, hundreds of millions.
It county is over 1 billion.
Yeah, so this is massive money, of public money, that you're voting for people to do things with. And if
Mm.
you vote for the wrong people, that can go bang very, very quickly.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. And I think that we need to do more to educate the public. Uh, educate maybe sounds a bit condescending, but raise awareness of exactly what it is that the council their councils do. And I also think that, to answer the original question, our main topic, does the current political system work for Surrey? My view is it doesn't work for a lot of reasons, and there needs to be reform of local government. And I think that's a conversation. Actually, I'm glad that the Labour government are forcing now, because there was a discussion a couple of years ago about unitarisation of councils in Surrey, and there was talk of a single unitary authority for Surrey. That's something I personally support, and I think that's a good idea. I mean, it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever to have 12. So there are 11 boroughs and districts and a top tier authority, the county council. So it makes no sense whatsoever to have 12 chief executive officers, 12 legal officers, 12 finance officers, and 12 departments of everything, right? Right. It just makes no sense whatsoever. It's costing a fortune. And the other thing is, residents don't know where to turn. Quite often, you've got borough councillors running around taking pictures of potholes when it's not actually anything to do with them, because all they're trying to do really is score a few election political points, when what they should do is just forward it onto the county councillor, regardless of party, in that area to deal with. And I think that as a unitary authority, it would be a one-stop shop for residents and a single point of accountability.
Yeah, well, I think it's about getting the calibre up again, and getting things done. So another reason for people's lack of respect or like of politicians is they're not seeing them delivering. Now, it's really interesting because delivery is actually really, really hard. It seems that everything against you delivering stuff, particularly change on a significant level, no matter what level of government you're at. And we know that sometimes getting something changed, like something added into a road, a crossing, or bringing down a speed limit, or changing a policy on something, can take years. It's so frustrating. You have to be so resilient and dogmatic and just keep going and going and going. And it's really interesting because a couple of councillors I know near me who are independents, they came in guns blazing, just going, "We're going to sort this council out. You lot are useless. You haven't done this, this, and this." And the other week they said to me, "God, it's so hard to get anything done. We've just realised we've done it for 2 years now and we still haven't done any of the things we said we'd do." And I was like, yes, it's really hard to get things done when you
And
do.
and and, and I've seen that here in Surrey Heath. I mean, the Liberal Democrats got in fair and square. They took control of the council fair and square. Said they were going to change the world, and really, I can see, the only evidence I can see that anything that they've changed is they've managed to um, include the pride flag to raise outside the council buildings. They've managed to score some money from, I think, Keep Britain Tidy to stop people to put these signs up about not throwing your chewing gum on the floor. Really low level stuff. I can't think of anything actually. One thing that they've done, major thing that they've done, they've been in now for nearly 2 years. Um, and I think the trouble is that, as we were saying earlier, that the public are so disengaged with it all that they don't actually notice.
They won't notice, and we are very poor at comms, let's be frank about it. Generally, you're not, that's your job, I get that, but most
Yeah, yeah.
councils aren't very good at getting things out there. So in my old area, we managed to deliver 2 town regeneration projects, really good ones. We provided a Nando's and sports facilities and all sorts in one area, and then a beautiful cinema with cafes and things in the other. And
Mm.
the amount of people I meet that just think it was a private developer who just came along and magicked these new regeneration projects. And I'm like, that was years of us at the council with packs of paper going on for hundreds of pages, reading through them, voting late at night until midnight about investing in this, looking at all the numbers, and then seeing it go through and taking the risk of it. That was us as councillors that made that happen. And I'm proud of that. It was a risk, but we changed that area and brought in economic prosperity, but nobody knows it was us.
No, and that's that. Yeah, we've got to do something about that. And I do honestly believe that unitary authorities is the way to go, and it will make it easier to communicate what's going on too.
Just understand, you've sort of set it out. You've got your 11 district and boroughs, and they've all got about 41 elected, 40 to 45 or so elected people. Now, Surrey is run by Liberal Democrat district and borough councils largely. I think the majority of them are now Liberal Democrat. People got fed up with the Conservatives. But I'll be political in this moment. I think you said it as well. The Liberals haven't really delivered much change either.
I can't
Nothing's
think of one thing, to be honest.
they've fallen flat on their promises. So now we've got a mass of Liberal Democrats of no opposition. So Mole Valley, for example, I think the literally most of the council, I won't know the exact numbers, but say 30 are Liberal Democrats and 10 are independents, a couple of Conservatives, maybe a Green or so, I don't know. You get this mismatch of chaos. Runnymede, my old council, has now got four leaders, four co-leaders, a Green one, a Labour one, an independent one, and a Liberal Democrat one. How that works, I just don't know. So you have all this chaos, which makes delivery even harder. And this means residents aren't seeing change or anything happening, and money's just sort of either sitting there or getting less and less. So the system isn't working effectively for all sorts of reasons, and we're not seeing things fixed and things changing. So I think you're right. We need a big overhaul. Unitary would mean a higher calibre of councillor, so people would fight over the job. So you imagine those 11 district and boroughs all lose their 40 councillors. Surrey's got 81 councillors and they're all looking for a role now, all of those people. So you can pick the best, the ones that have actually done something, the decent people, and put them into a unitary, give them a bit more of an allowance, because as you say, we got £4 grand a year or something at Runnymede, which is peanuts. I was always out of pocket, like largely out of pocket doing that. So give them proper remuneration and make sure you've got the best people in there.
And support. And that's the thing, is that, I spend a lot of my time, and as I know other councillors do, so I'm not saying I'm unique here in any way, but I spend a lot of time fielding comms from residents, whether it be a Facebook direct message, whether it be an email. I sometimes get telephone calls, or less of those these days, and very rarely get snail mail letters anymore. Maybe one or two a year, if that. Um, but it's still a huge amount of communication from residents, and I think that now, as cabinet members, we do get extra support, because we get so much more comms from residents right across the county. But the average councillor gets very little support, admin support, and I think that needs to be changed as well. Funnily enough, I was in a meeting today about using AI to help councillors with their casework, and that's something that's being developed at the moment. Something I'm involved with in the back end of and behind the scenes. But really, what we ought to look at is how we actually fix, so we and make politics work in Surrey. And I'd be keen to hear from you what how you think that should be achieved.
So basically, you can look at other countries. So France has mayors, and actually they're all known for being corrupt because they've got so much power. The mayor sort of says what's going to happen in that area. So I don't believe that's probably the model. Italy, you've got chaos of all the different political parties. It's sorted itself out recently more, but it's had years of chaos of just a
And corruption.
so I don't think that works. And people who kind of support proportional representation, I say be careful what you wish for, because you can end up with that. And you can also end up with radical parties slinking in, like Reform, or perhaps even worse than that,
Far
jumping.
right wing parties, yeah. Yeah.
So I believe you need less politicians, make it more competitive, pay them properly. I think you have a one strike and you're out rule. I'm fed up with people getting away with things. I've run my little political career squeaky clean. People have tried to accuse me of things that, we've all
Just
had
don't stand up, yeah.
been I've never been offered a thing. The only thing I've ever been offered was a ticket to go and see the light show at Windsor Great Park, to see the impact on nature from the lights and things. That's the only thing I've ever been offered in my 20 years. So we're squeaky clean. But I think anyone who does do something wrong, or there is even actually a sniff of something wrong, that needs to be investigated, and we get rid of those people fast. We cannot let rotten apples poison the basket, basically, and the public need to see we're really serious. So it takes years to build a reputation. You can pull a reputation down really quickly. So I'm not saying that, somebody says, oh, that councillor looks a bit dodgy, get rid of them. I'm really not saying that, but I think we have to be ultra sensitive to really checking and keeping an eye on this. And I think the electorate have a role to play as well. So when you see decent politicians, when you see them trying to do something, if they're speaking out about issues, I mean, during the general election, I picked up on various issues in the local area. Even if you don't agree with my politics, just don't be horrible about it, because all I'm
Yeah.
trying to do, it shocked the hell out of me that people have said to me recently they thought I was paid to be a general election candidate. You don't get paid a thing. We're all volunteers. Everyone who helps is a volunteer. You may disagree with their politics, but they are out using their time because they care about the area and the country and the person they're putting forward. It costs me a huge amount of money to stand in this election. I'll put it right out there. It's not cheap for anyone to want to do that. We need to make sure politics is accessible for everyone and it's not a barrier that you don't have the money or you're tied down with childcare or disability. That to me is really important as well. But this kind of vision that everyone's corrupt and dodgy, we must get rid of that. And if the electorate see politicians, local or national, trying to do the right thing or trying to talk about stuff, please support them. Don't always attack, basically. Find ways to reach out to them, because the more we attack, the more they retreat and have less to do with the public, and that whole relationship's damaged. And that means our whole democracy's damaged. And Surrey, to me, is a county where we should really have those open relationships and all be working together to protect this area.
I think that's really fair. And, particularly on your point about the electorate, the residents having a part to play. Yes, they do. And funnily enough, I had a really interesting conversation with a resident on Facebook who said something. I won't bore you with the details what she said to me, but it was bang out of order. It was really personal and completely unnecessary. And I told her so. And I said, you really ought to consider the fact that, you're probably the first one to complain that, the quality of politicians that we have locally. Well, this is the reason why, because when you talk to people like that on social media, they think to themselves, why would I put myself through that kind of thing? They're human beings like everybody else. So yeah, I completely agree with everything that you've just said there. And we'll all have a part to play as well as politicians to tell people what we're doing on their behalf, so that
Be honest, to try and be straight about the situation, not overpromise, not lie. There's been a hell of a lot of that in Surrey. I've seen
yeah,
a lot of it on election stuff going through of people
oh, dreadful.
do this, I'll do this, and they don't do any of it. And nothing is going to put people off politicians and politics more than never seeing anything happen or change.
But that's one of the other issues that you can. I only discovered this a few years ago when I complained to the council's monitoring officer about a piece of election literature that had been put out by an opposition party.
Yeah.
And they said, well, yeah, they can say what they want. And there's absolutely nothing that can be done about it.
Idea, there should be a national entity set up that's like a political lie checker. So anything that goes out on a piece of literature or a politician like you or I or national level says, if it's a complete lie, it should be called out by this independent body that just says that is completely wrong and you cannot do it and you cannot mislead people. No one should be able to lie. And I know that sounds like a big thing because everyone will say all politicians are liars. There's a difference between sort of putting things in a certain frame or setting out certain parts of information to telling bold lies that you cannot deliver or cannot do or aren't true, and that should not be allowed.
Right. Well, I think that the world would certainly be different if it was me and you in charge, Marissa. I think definitely, but
People that get involved in the community, people that will listen to this podcast and things, who probably never thought about stepping forward into politics. And
yeah,
I'd like to say, come in, because the more decent people that come in, the more decent we can make it. We
yeah.
have to just not let it be full of the kind of bad people or the wrong people or the inept people. We have to make sure that we stand up for what we believe in. All of us have got the opportunity to become a politician, because frankly, all a politician is someone who's trying to change their community or lead.
Yeah, and I have to say, my experience, particularly at the county council, less so at borough level, but particularly at the county council, I have to say, I've got a huge amount of respect for politicians of all political colours at Surrey County Council. We've got some fantastic ones right across the board who are definitely in it for the right reasons.
I think that's a really important thing to say, Paul. I mean, I've got a couple of independents in my area who are really decent. I work with them really well. They do the right thing of emailing me the county issues rather than trying to pretend they can deal with them. We try and work on projects together and things. So, and at county, as you say, we've got some really bright, capable people in there that
Of
people.
all colours, all political colours. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's important that we make that point. But I think that overall, an overall strategy, I think single unitary authority is definitely the way to go for Surrey. I think that would be the start of things to do. So I think we've done that now to death. So let's get on to Surrey Discovery. So what is your discovery for Surrey this week?
Well, just that I went to the community apple press in Lye last Saturday, which is
An
actually
apple press. What's that?
it's the season for all the apples falling off the trees. So rather
Oh,
than wait,
right.
they got people to fill up baskets and bags and everything. And they had these people with massive sort of juicers, and they were just turning them into juice basically for people. And you
Right.
could freeze the juice or just drink it. I got this massive bottle, which was probably 2 liters, and drank it all in like one sitting. It was so good. It's probably full, but it was really yummy. And then they had local like cake stands and cheese, local
Right.
cheese, burgers, like raising some money and things like that. And the community just walked across. It was really nice. And the reason I'm mentioning it is because there's some others coming up. I'm always a fan of a local food fair.
Yeah.
That coming Saturday, so that will be the 5th of October, Betchworth Village Hall have an apple press event as well. So if anyone's around,
Oh, I'm
go
looking, just looking at my diet. Oh, I'm working this weekend. Never mind.
maybe some apple juice. But no, it was delicious. It was really good, and we weren't wasting the apples that way. So if anyone's got a free moment on Saturday, come and have a look. And as I said, there'll be lots of other food and things going on.
Oh, brilliant. Well, I'll definitely have it in the diary for next year, the apple press event. That sounds like fun. Excellent. So my Surrey discovery, I actually only discovered today, right? I had another discovery which I'll check. I'll save for another week. But I discovered something today that I think is so cool that I can't wait to I can't wait to tell you about it in particular, because I know this is something you'll be really really keen about. So I was doing some casework today for a group of local residents in Deepcut, right, to do with the new Mindenhurst development. And I was going through the planning portal to look at the various planning applications to do with Mindenhurst, particularly the reserved matters applications, which are the smaller, more sort of in detail applications. And I found one that basically said um, to turn an old air raid bunker, because remember, Deepcut is a former garrison.
Mm.
So an old air raid bunker, underground bunker, into a bat cave. And I'm like, what? A bat cave? So anyway, I'm looking through and I couldn't find exactly where there was no map to show me where this place was.
You
So
thinking
I email, sorry?
thinking Batman's living there right now, are you?
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, I emailed the developer and said, "Where is this place?" And they sent me a pin on a map to where it was, and it wasn't easy to find. But I got on my bike and had a look for it, and I was expecting to see one of these World War II sort of pillbox type things, but it wasn't. It's a proper underground bunker, right? That was built. I think it was either for the Second World War or the Cold War. I can't quite make out what it was for, but it's proper underground. It has two entrances. I've done a video. It's on my Facebook page. Um, and yeah, what they're going to do is turn that into um, a bat. What did they call it? Hiber, where they hibernate. There's a name for it. Um, yeah, and it's just so cool what they've done, for the local ecology for bats. And if you look at the reports that's on the planning portal, they've gone to an extraordinary amount of detail and in the design of this thing to repurpose it as a bat barn.
Right.
Um, and yeah, just really, really cool. So check out my Facebook page at Deep Cut Deach if you're listening to this. And there's a video there of it. And it's just so cool.
Okay, I will have a look at that. As long as they're sure we don't need these bunkers for the World War III that's
Well, precisely.
on podcast. But no, I'm all for the bats having their own house.
Yeah, well, we already have quite a few bat barns in Deepcut. We have quite a large bat population, and in fact, we've got them on the estate where I am right now at Dettingen Park in Deepcut. We've got two separate ones at the front of the estate, and the residents who pay a management fee every year
Yeah,
actually contribute to the upkeep of that, and they're actually heated in the winter for when the bats are only at a very low temperature. But yeah, they're heated and the bats hibernate there. And I went in with the Surrey bat group
yeah,
and actually saw them hibernating in there, which was really cool. So yeah, and we've already got quite a few of them around Deepcut, and this one will be. I just love the idea how they've repurposed an
yeah.
old bit of wartime infrastructure, which would have probably just been demolished and
Yeah.
dug out of the ground, and they've repurposed it for this.
Bats are such incredible creatures anyway. I don't know if you probably see them flying over your house then, do you?
Yeah, you do in the summer. Yeah, you do in the summer.
Comes dusk and things. I worked on a forestry project in Fiji and they had the massive fruit bats. They're literally
They're huge, aren't they?
I used to just be obsessed every night at 6 o'clock as the sun was coming down. I'd be like, I've got to go and lie outside by the swimming pool and just watch these massive bats. They're so strange coming over. But no, that's great. I mean, this is when development does work, when people do invest in these sorts of things and do those extra steps. And going back to the beginning of our conversation, that's what we're going to have to watch as development creeps up around Surrey, that we're already fighting a biodiversity nightmare in the
Yeah,
country at
a-
large.
absolutely. So I think that's it for this week. The Besties Surrey. Uh, this will be published on Friday, and yeah, we'll be back again next week. So make sure that you tune in.
Yep. See you next week.